Hi, fantasy readers. This is Karyne Norton, your fellow book binger, and you are listening to the Finding Fantasy Reads podcast, where you can test out a new fantasy story every single week to find your next favorite author. You'll want to stick around for today's story if you enjoy Phoenix's mysterious turns and a hint of romance. It's written by Lusine Torossian, who crafts young adult fantasy novels inspired by Armenian mythology. Drawing from her heritage, she weaves rich folklore into tales of adventure, magic, resilience, and hope. When she's not creating magical worlds, Lusine finds herself contemplating the meaning of life by analyzing shapes in the clouds. Often, her story characters show up there. A New York City native, she now lives in sunny Florida with her husband, alongside her writing partner, a very brave Cavalier King Charles Spaniel named Finney. I'm realizing how many of us authors put dogs and cats in our author bios because I'm discovering a lot of breeds I'm just really unfamiliar with. I probably need to research dog breeds and maybe even cat breeds, even though they're not my favorite, and then use it for a book or something. Anyway, stick around to the end or check out today's show notes to see where you can find more from Lusine. For now, please enjoy The Ashmaker's Gift by Lusine Torossian. Late winter, year of Anahit. Many dismiss Hazaran Bulbul, the mythical firebird who brought life to barren lands, as fabrication. Some think I have lost all sense chasing this legend. But this winter has been a relentless beast, burying our precious seedlings under an endless snow blanket. The kingdom's farmers fear a lost harvest, unless a miracle occurs. A legendary type of miracle. Tomorrow at dawn, I embark for the twin peaks of Masisa. Legends speak of a hidden chamber where the Hazaran Bulbul slumbers, her ashes holding the power to revive the land. I will document my journey for future generations. 3 apples fell from the sky, Tatik Mama sang, her raspy voice rising and falling with the mournful tune. Silver hair escaped her headscarf as she swayed, her lined face painted orange by the hearth's glow. I sat on the threadbare rug at her feet, grinding herbs with the mortar and pestle. Smoke curled through the room in strange, almost deliberate patterns, as if trying to shape itself into stories. The familiar scent of singed herbs offered meager comfort against the gnawing emptiness in my stomach. Today, my great-grandmother's ritual felt like a delay. I was itching to be done and on my way to the market. But this ceremony, like all her ash-making rituals, could not be rushed. Tatik Mama pointed a gnarled finger at the ashes beside me, her silver ring catching the firelight. "Keep mixing, young ashmaker," she instructed. Returning to her own mixture, she continued to sing. "One for the observer, one for the storyteller, and one for the listener who believes." The hearth's flickering flames seemed to dance in harmony with her words, casting hopping shadows on the faded tapestries and rough stone walls. I poked the logs, urging the flames higher. Each burning released its own story, a complex mix of despair and hope, death and rebirth. Dawn's first light crept through our gauzy curtains, but the winter wind howled like a wounded beast, rattling our shutters. Oblivious, Tatik Mama continued to sing. "When barren earth turns crops to sand, the Hazaran Bulbul soared over the land." "Not that story again," I blurted. The mythical firebird's tale felt like a cruel mockery of our struggles, its promise of renewal as distant as the once bountiful harvests. "What?" Tatik Mama cupped her hand to her ear, the bone charm bracelet my great-grandfather had carved for her clinking softly, its eye beads seeming to watch me. I raised my voice. "The land needs fertile soil and milder winters, not a mythical creature. The village granary is almost empty." Tatik Mama met my gaze. Always so eager to dismiss the impossible, young ashmaker. I need to get to the market before it opens, I said. Maybe we can trade these ash mixes for a few potatoes. Tatik Mama pursed her lips. Impatience is the fire that burns the pot before the stew is cooked. Sighing, I sniffed each mound to ensure the proper amounts. A spoonful of tarragon ash and 2 spoons each of dried mint and oregano. The ashes seemed to warm beneath my touch, their scents intensifying the more I ground them. They carried a reminder of better days, when the Arhaya highlands bloomed with fresh herbs and hope. I caught Tatik Mama watching me with knowing eyes, a secret smile at her lips. Is the legend true? I asked, my fingers tingling where the ashes clung to them. A mischievous glint twinkled in Tatik Mama's eyes. Yours is the 3rd apple, Sirun, the listener who believes. At 18, I felt too old for such riddles. 3 years in this highland village hadn't dulled my memory of Masadi's bustling markets, where merchants like my father once traded without fear of empty stalls and empty stomachs. I'd chosen this life after my studies, trading the Grand Academy for Tatik Mama's cottage in the mountains. She'd refused to leave, clinging to memories of my great-grandfather Krikor woven into these walls. Named after her, I shared a special bond. Growing up, I'd spent summers here harvesting crops. She taught me ash-making skills while I regaled her with theatrics from home and the Masadi Academy. Now, despair gripped the entire kingdom. Harsh winters had stripped the land bare. Whispers at the market spoke of meager rations and dwindling hope. Baba's last letter begged me to convince Tatik Mama to move to Masadi. But the journey, even in forgiving conditions, was treacherous. And Tatik Mama, weakened by age and illness, may not survive it. Our world now centered on pouches of ashes created from herbs, vine roots, and even some remains of sacrificial animals. Tributes to Goddess Anahit for healing, or wishes granted. Once, these ashes were sacred, used in ceremonies to commune with the gods. Now, more people bought them for simpler needs. Willow ash for pain, sage ash for upset stomachs, oak ash for healing wounds. The old magic still worked, even if few remembered the spells that once accompanied it. With smudged fingers, I tied the final pouch. Done. How many? Tatik Mama asked. 7. Her brow furrowed. Be careful, Sirun. I had a strange dream last night. I turned to gather the pouches so she wouldn't see me rolling my eyes. Tatik Mama always had strange dreams. Beware of a man with the sun trapped in his eye, she warned. I placated her with a nod. Yesterday it was a woman with a snake tongue. The day before, a raven with a message. I'll be back by nightfall, I said, kissing her weathered cheek. Snow blanketed the ground as I set off for the market in the pale light of dawn. From her window, Tatik Mama's watchful gaze bored into my back as I trudged through swirling flurries, her warning about the sun-eyed man lingering in my thoughts. Late winter, year of Anahit, day 13. Sheer cliffs, treacherous snow bridges, howling winds test my endurance. Yet thoughts of my village's barren fields push me onward. This evening, I stumbled upon a crevice veiled by brittle, twisted vines, a passage into the mountain itself. This mountain is said to harbor a guardian dragon. With the rumbling sounds emerging from its depths, that's easy to imagine. At first light, I will enter the cavern, with the goddess guiding my steps. The market bustled with desperate energy as I navigated the maze of wagons and tents, the air heavy with winter's bite and sour with fear. Settling beside Martin, a local farmer, I helped arrange his meager offerings, each shriveled potato a bitter reminder of our failing land. We exchanged grim smiles, no words needed to acknowledge our paltry yields. A commotion rippled through the market's edge. A grand carriage rolled into view, its gleaming wheels crunching over frozen ground like breaking bones. The elaborately cloaked coachman paused to speak with Aram, the chicken farmer, who pointed our way with trembling fingers. The carriage rumbled down the path, its polished wood and brass fittings an obscene display of wealth in our struggling village. It halted before Martin and me. Martin shot me a quizzical look, the weathered grooves on his forehead deepening. I shrugged, equally bewildered. A tall man in maroon Royal Guard attire stepped out. Dark waves framed his face, highlighting basil green eyes that seemed to take in every detail. For one so young, likely not much older than me, he had a commanding, graceful presence. He was easily the most stunning man I'd ever seen. A dangerous thought I forced aside as I spotted the golden insignia on his lapel, an eye swallowing the sun. Tatik Mama's warning echoed in my head. "Beware of a man with the sun trapped in his eye." My heart quickened. "Are you the Ash Girl?" His voice held no warmth as he spoke the royal tongue. "Ash Girl?" I stammered, taken aback that he knew of me. "The one who sells ashes," he clarified. His gaze dropped to the basket at my feet. "You need ashes?" I flushed, knowing my accent was strong in the royal tongue. "I have herbal mixes for stomach pain, and—" He cut me off. "Please, come with me." I glanced again at the sun eye symbol, dread pooling in my stomach. Why?" His jaw clenched. "The Prince of Vosk requires your expertise." He extended his hand toward me. This wasn't an invitation. It was a command. My heart galloped with apprehension. Murmurs rippled through the gathered crowd like wind through dying wheat. Their curious eyes darted between me and the royal carriage. They were clearly hungry for gossip to replace their empty tables. Turning to Martin, I murmured in Sophenian, "Please tell Tatik Mama I'll be home soon." Concern clouded Martin's weathered face as he nodded. "Be careful, child." Ignoring the guard's offered hand, I picked up my basket and hoisted myself onto the carriage's footboard. The door swung open to reveal an interior that seemed stolen from another world. Silk curtains, burgundy velvet seating, gleaming woodwork. The contrast to our dust-choked marketplace left me momentarily stunned. A young man lounged on a plush seat, golden-haired and clad in silks. Crown Prince Antonius himself. Despite being younger than me by at least 2 years, he wielded power like a practiced tyrant. His pale eyes flickered with the same amusement I'd seen when his father's soldiers confiscated our winter stores last year. "Ah, the Ash Girl, I presume?" he drawled, gesturing to the seat opposite with a lazy flick of his wrist. The guard stepped past me, sealed the doors with a final click, and settled beside the prince. I remained rooted inside the doorway, my knuckles white around my basket handle. "Why do you need my help?" The prince leaned forward. "What's your name?" "Sirun," I said, belatedly adding, "Your Highness." His grin widened. "Sirun. That means beautiful in Sophenian, correct?" I raised my brows, well aware of my smudged fingers and village clothes. He was clearly mocking me. "Your full name?" The guard pressed, weighing me with his dark green gaze. "Sirun Arakilian," I said, confused. "What is this about?" The prince and guard exchanged a heavy glance before the prince asked, "Have you heard the legend of the Firebird?" The carriage jolted into motion. I stumbled, clutching my basket tighter. The Hazaran Bulbul? Ah, the prince nodded, brow furrowed. That's what you Sophenians call it. Outside, the town blurred away, replaced by bleak countryside rushing past. I planted my feet wider. Where are you taking me? We're going to find the Firebird, Ash Girl, the prince said, grinning. He pulled a leather-bound book from his pack. This journal belonged to Krekor Arakilian. A relative, I presume? My mouth slackened. My great-grandfather? Within these pages are instructions for capturing the Firebird, the prince said, eyes bright with excitement. You're going to help us find its ashes and awaken it. Late winter, year of Anahit, day 14. I entered the mountain this morning. An otherworldly, luminescent cavern unfolded before me like a forgotten temple. The air crackled with a strange energy. In the back, obsidian columns formed a massive doorway, soft roars pulsing from beyond them like distant thunder. No handles marked the doors, only a strange script etched into the rough wall beside them. This message I will not record, for fear of it falling into the wrong hands. The carriage jolted over a bump, rattling the interior and nearly knocking me sideways. I gripped the door handle. Stop the carriage. I cannot go with you. Why not? The prince's surprise seemed genuine, but he made no move to halt our journey. You can't just abduct someone and expect obedience, I retorted, my voice sharp with the same indignation I'd felt watching Vosk soldiers march into our village last year. An odd noise escaped the guard. A suppressed laugh? He quickly turned his attention to the passing countryside. The prince assessed me with narrowed eyes. But you are my subject. My jaw clenched with suppressed fury, yet my gaze betrayed me, drawn to the journal like mist to mountain peaks. Taking a deep breath, I said through gritted teeth, Your father conquering our land does not make me your subject. I paused, then added with deliberate insult, Your Highness. The guard stiffened, his hand twitching toward his sword. The prince's brows disappeared beneath golden bangs. Except I can ask Monvel here to toss you in the dungeon for disobeying me, though that seems a bit excessive. A bit, I said tightly, my pulse hammering in my ears. The guard, Monvel, flicked his eyes to me with renewed interest, as if reassessing his first impression. The prince nodded toward the journal. Aren't you curious? I frowned. Of course I was curious. Tatik Mama rarely spoke of her late husband, who'd crossed the veil before I was born. Was it coincidence that her favorite fable centered on the same mythical creature written about in his journal? The same tale she'd sung over and over while teaching me the art of ash-making, always watching me with those shuttered eyes. What secrets are you keeping, Tatik Mama? The tightness in my chest warned me to refuse, but refusing wouldn't give me answers. With a mix of defiance and resignation, I slumped into the seat across from the two men, placing my basket of ashes beside me. If this journal shed light on why Tatik Mama refused to leave the dying village, maybe this risk was worth taking. The prince smiled smugly and extended the book toward me. I wrapped my fingers around the rough leather cover, its scent of age and secrets tugging at something deep within me. How did you acquire this? A friend of a friend obtained it, somewhere, the prince said, dismissing my question with a flippant wave. Doesn't matter where. The contents matter. A friend of a friend? How likely was it that someone in my position had a friend of a friend connected to royalty? More likely, this was confiscated, stolen. The royals were conquerors, after all. But the journal seemed to pulse with life beneath my fingers, its leather cover warming at my touch. Before I could reconsider, I opened to the first page. A piece of parchment fell onto my lap. It was an unfinished letter with one sentence, written to an unknown recipient from great-grandfather Krikor. I found the Hazaran Bulbul, but she's not what you think. This must be a joke, I protested. The prince grinned. Read on, Ash Girl. You'll see why I think otherwise. This aggravating royal had commandeered me as if I had no life, no responsibilities. Heat rose up my cheeks and I snapped. If I'm to go on this ridiculous quest, I need something in return. The prince raised his brows as if to say, You're in no position to make demands. To my surprise, it was the guard, Monvel, who responded. Of course. What are your terms? His offer caught me off guard, especially when the prince did not argue. My great-grandmother needs help, I said, thinking of Tatik Mama alone in our cottage. Provisions, herbal remedies, and I want to write to her, reassure her that I'm safe. The prince stared me down with pursed lips. Done. I settled back. Despite my initial resistance, a strange anticipation stirred within me at the promise of answers hidden within the journal's pages. A thought kept replaying in my head as the barren countryside sped by. What if the Firebird isn't just a legend? Late winter, year of Anahit, day 15. I emerged into a cavernous space covered in azurite. A glowing pool harbored a small island at its center, containing 3 mounds of ash. A monstrous head emerged from beyond the island. The tips of its scales were the color of molten rock, eyes burning like embers in the night. Vishop, guardian dragon of the underworld. We spoke. He mocked. Convinced I meant no harm, he allowed me to wade to the tiny island. I cannot explain how I chose correctly. I simply knew. When I scooped up the ashes, a sigh filled the cavern, as if the ashes knew they were about to awaken. Emerging into the brightness of daylight, the ashes coalesced, forming into a tiny bird no larger than my hand. The Hazaran Bulbul, slowly waking. The carriage climbed along narrow mountain paths, snow crunching beneath the wheels. The crisp air bit at my cheeks, sharp with pine and damp earth. Each creak and lurch spiked a jolt of fresh anxiety through me. Why had I agreed to this nonsensical journey? How was Tatik Mama faring? Had she received my letter? Within the first hour, another wagon and a dozen mounted guards had joined us. Prince Antonius whispered instructions to one guard who sped away, presumably to handle my request about Tatik Mama. When the prince stretched out on his seat and promptly fell asleep, Monvel moved to sit beside me. I tried not to react to his closeness, but my heart fluttered each time he leaned in to glance at the journal over my shoulder. Finally, I shifted it between us. His eyes lit with genuine interest. Surprising for a royal guard. May I? He asked, gesturing to a passage. His Sophenian, though heavily accented, flowed naturally. We fell into a rhythm of reading and translating, his questions revealing a curiosity about more than just the Firebird legend. Your great-grandfather was a scholar in Masadi? He asked, fingers tracing the careful script. Do you still have family there? Great-grandfather Krikor? A scholar? That had been a surprise for me, too. My grandmother, Lusine in Masadi, rarely shared stories of her own father. Only that he'd been a merchant before her parents decided to stay in the Highlands village, where Tatik Mama now lived. Yet in his journal, Krikor spoke of the academy and of being lost in the ancient tomes in his youth. Apparently, among other things, I found myself sharing stories of my own experiences at the Masadi Academy, my family's shop, My life before the Highlands. Monvel listened intently, his reserved manner softening as the hours passed. The journal's mysteries drew us deeper. I almost forgot about his striking features, lost instead in discovering my great-grandfather's mind. Almost. Yet each time my gaze caught the golden insignia on both men's lapels, that eye swallowing the sun, my skin prickled. Which one had Tatik Mama's dream warned me against? Monvel or the prince? Or maybe both? Mount Masisa loomed ahead, its snow-capped twin peaks resembling streaks of brittle hair against the iron sky. My lungs fought against the thinning air whistling through the wagon's cracks. Unease gnawed at me as I shifted in my seat for the dozenth time. "Are you uncomfortable, Searoon?" Monvel's deep voice rumbled, sending an unexpected warmth through me despite the chill. I struggled to voice my thoughts, distracted by the way the air seemed to crackle between us. Could my great-grandfather's journal be true? If the Hazaran Bulbul is real, it would change everything. As if in response to my thoughts, the ashes in my basket grew warm against my hip. "I'm fine," I muttered, though it was more than the situation that had me squirming. It was Monvel's closeness, the way his brow furrowed in concentration, his breath whispering past my ear, sending hot and cold shivers down my spine. "The air is thinner here," he said gently. "It's natural for your heart to beat faster, your lungs to crave more air. You'll adjust." His comforting words thawed the icy fear just a little. "I know." The carriage lurched to a halt. The prince jumped up and swung the door open. A powerful wind whipped at our clothes, tearing at my hair. Outside, an unsettling mist rose from the ground, like ash stirred from a cold hearth. Guards dismounted with practiced efficiency. 3 figures disappeared down a steep incline, returning shortly with a royal priest, his white robes snapping in the wind like winter-bleached banners. "Your Highness," the priest bowed to Prince Antonius, "the mountain entrance lies precisely where we anticipated." The prince jumped down from the carriage. "Excellent." Monvel leapt down, offering his hand to me. My fingers brushed his calloused palm as I stepped onto the slippery path. When I shivered in my threadbare cloak, he removed his woolen mantle and, despite my protests, wrapped it around my shoulders. His warmth lingered in the fabric, along with a scent of pine and leather that sent an entirely different kind of shiver through me. Foolish, traitorous heart. The wind moaned through the mountain peaks like the pained cry of a giant. I straightened my spine and followed the others, fear and hope warring within me with each step. Late winter, year of Anahit, day 18. Today, as she flew over the twin peaks of Masisa, the snows melted. Crops and flowers bloomed. Birds of all colors, sizes, and shapes arrived to nest. Bees buzzed into newly formed honeycombs. Hazaran Bulbul continued to spread color over surrounding forests as I watched. It is a sight I will never forget for as long as I live. The rugged path ended at a gaping maw in the mountainside, exactly as great-grandfather Krekor had described in the journal. Torch in hand, Monvel pushed aside brittle vines that crumbled at his touch. We followed single file through the narrow opening, my shoulder brushing the cold stone as I tried not to lean into Monvel's warmth ahead of me. The passage opened into a vast cavern where colossal obsidian doors loomed before us, their surface shimmering like frozen night. The royal priest held a torch over inscriptions etched beside the doors. A flicker of recognition sparked within me, but I said nothing, waiting for the priest to decipher the words. The priest muttered to the prince, who shook his head in bewilderment. The same confusion rippled through the others, until the prince's gaze finally fell on me. At first glance, the inscription appeared as nonsensical scribbles. But as I focused, the symbols sharpened, reforming into the familiar script of Sophine. Only those with pure intentions may enter. Can you decipher that? I whispered to Monvel, who had come to stand beside me, his warmth a welcome presence in the chill air. He nodded, brow furrowed. Unexpected. This must be centuries old. I wouldn't have thought it would be written in the royal tongue. I shot him a surprised look. It's not in the royal language. It's in Sophenian. Our eyes locked, a silent understanding passing between us. Steeling my nerves, I pressed my palm to the grimy door. A satisfying click echoed through the cavern as a latch released. The massive doors groaned open to reveal a dark tunnel beyond. The prince surged forward, but an invisible barrier repelled him at the threshold, sending him staggering back. Frustration contorted his features into an ugly mask. Monvel and I stepped through the doorway as easily as smoke through air, while the rest met the same resistance as the prince. I met the prince's gaze, unable to suppress a flicker of satisfaction. What were his true intentions, if the mountain itself deemed him unworthy? "See that she delivers the ashes, Monvel," the prince said, voice strained with wounded authority. Monvel's jaw clenched, but he remained silent. With a final look at the prince, I turned away, plunging deeper into the cavern alongside Monvel. The massive doors shut behind us with a groan that echoed through the mountain like an ancient giant's snore. Early spring, year of Anahit, day 25. She speaks. The beautiful Hazaran Bulbul settled beside my camp. Legend says she'll live to old age, then burn to ash, awaiting rebirth when she's needed. I've offered to provide her a comfortable home. She rested her head on my palm and fell asleep. A faint luminescence beckoned from ahead. My hand instinctively sought Monvel's, his calloused fingers intertwining with mine as we crept forward. The acrid tang of burnt ash filled the air, mingling with something older, sacred. Something stirred within me, a resonance with the ancient power in this place. My free hand tingled. The shadows danced at the edges of my vision each time Monvel's thumb brushed across my knuckles. We emerged into the cavern's heart, before a vast pool shimmering with ethereal light that emanated from countless azurites adorning the walls and ceiling. In the center, a tiny island cradled 3 mounds of ashes. Monvel and I skirted the pool's edge, my gaze fixed on the ashes. Just as I prepared to step into the water, a guttural growl reverberated from the cavern's depths. State your purpose. Monvel stiffened beside me, hand gripped around his sword hilt. Fear speared through my chest. This must be Vishop, the dragon guardian. We seek the Hazaran Bulbul, I said, voice echoing. The only response came as a reverberating growl. I gritted my teeth. Why hadn't my great-grandfather documented how he'd dealt with the dragon? Strength? Wit? How had he chosen the right ashes? Then, unbidden, a verse from Tatik Mama's tale surfaced in my mind and rose to my lips. When barren earth turned crops to sand, the Hazaran Bulbul soared over the land. Monvel shot me a startled look. Vishop, still hidden in darkness, let out a weary sigh that sent tremors through the cavern. When I finished the song, he said, You are its life guardian, then. My eyes widened. Life guardian? Yes, Vishop hissed. I guard her in death, and you guard her in life. How? Monvel stammered, releasing my hand to step into the water. Siren, tell me which ashes. No, the dragon roared, his voice thundering off the cavern walls. Only the life guardian may approach. I handed Monvel his mantle and wiped my sweaty palms on my cloak. Our eyes met. Vulnerability flickered in his gaze. Be careful, Siren. I'll be fine, I whispered, and stepped into the pool. Monvel reached out to help me, only to bump against an invisible barrier. Vishop chuckled, a low rumble that echoed through the cavern. Predictable. The Guardian's soul-bonded always tries to follow. Soul-bonded? I exchanged glances with Monvel, grateful for the dim light hiding my flushed cheeks as I waded deeper. The water was surprisingly warm as it lapped at my calves, rising to my thighs. By the time I reached the tiny island, the water swirled around my waist. It wasn't an island at all, but a raised rock face with 3 mounds of ashes atop it, like offerings on an altar. The water around me stilled. The azurite's glow dimmed, and something ancient stirred in the depths beneath me. A low vibration hummed through the cavern, making the surface of the pool tremble. Bubbles rose around me, first a few, then dozens, like boiling water. A shadow darker than the depths shifted beneath my feet. I gasped as something brushed against my legs. In the next heartbeat, a massive body erupted from the water before me, sending waves crashing against my chest. Its head alone spanned the size of 2 men. The beast slithered onto the ledge behind the tiny island. Dagger-sharp teeth lined its maw, scales rising like mountain peaks along its spine. Vishop, the infamous serpent dragon of legend, guardian to the gates of the underworld, and apparently also guardian of the firebird's ashes. Choose correctly, the creature growled, and her freedom shall be yours. My teeth chattered, despite the warm water. What if I choose wrong? A low growl emanated from his throat. Then neither of you shall leave this mountain. The weight of the choice pressed down on me as if the mountain itself bore upon my shoulders. One wrong scent, one mistaken grain of ash, and both Monvel and I would die here. I turned to look at him. Not a speck of fear showed in his eyes as he nodded encouragement. He trusted me that much? His confidence steadied my nerves. You're an ash maker, I reminded myself. This is what you were trained for. How many times had Tatik Mama tested my nose, teaching me to identify the subtlest difference between burnt herbs? Hundreds? Thousands? Taking a steady breath, I bowed my head over the first mound and inhaled deeply. Woodsy? Pine, with a hint of elm sap. Vishop's lips stretched into a reptilian grin, sharp teeth glinting in the bluish glow of the azurites. I cringed, waiting to be struck down. Nothing happened. I moved to the second mound, the scent familiar and lovely. Lavender, rose, and grape, I said quickly. The dragon nodded approval, and I blew out a shaky breath. As I sniffed the final mound, my stomach tightened. Was the dragon toying with me? This isn't ash. It's soil. Are you certain? Vishop asked. I leaned in and sniffed again. The earthy scent shifted, revealing layers of other scents beneath. First came sweetness, like nectar warmed by sunlight. I inhaled deeper. There. The delicate scent of night-blooming jasmine, of fresh dew on grass. Soil. But not ordinary soil, I muttered. almost to myself. With each breath, new layers emerged. It smells of honey-kissed sunlight and moonlit gardens. Another breath filled my chest with such unexpected joy it brought tears to my eyes. It smells of innocence and love. I frowned at my own words, but they felt true, resonating deep within me like one of Tatik Mama's songs. A heavy pause. The water lapped at my waist like a restless spirit. Behind me, metal whispered against leather. I glanced back as Monvel drew his sword, his eyes fixed on the dragon. Vishop moved closer, his breath a mix of putrid air and dank earth. "Correct," he whispered. His word bounced off the cavern walls, echoing all around me. "Correct, correct, correct." The sound seemed to resonate with something ancient stirring within the mountain's depths. A colossal exhalation rippled through the cavern. In its wake, the final ash mound trembled, then rose, ashes swirling in a slow, mesmerizing dance. Something powerful and old awakened in the air around us. Grain by grain, the ashes cascaded into my palm, warm and alive against my skin. "Life guardian of the Hazaran Bulbul." Vishop's voice held grudging respect. "You hold the power to awaken her." I met Monvel's proud gaze across the pool. The mix of awe and concern in his eyes made my heart flutter. "Remember," Vishop rumbled, his voice heavy with warning. "Not all seek the Firebird with pure intentions." With those final words, the serpent dragon, guardian to the gates of the underworld, dissolved into speckles of ash before our eyes. Early spring, year of Anahit, day 35. She slept for 3 days. When she woke, we talked, shared stories. I learned of her loneliness, the burden of being a creature of legend. I told her about my own solitary existence. She has a secret, one she's still too tired to share. I've stayed up nights wondering. We emerged from the cavern into a sunlit landscape of melting snow. Shivering in my drenched clothes, with mud squelching beneath my boots, I cradled the glistening ashes in my palm like fragile petals. Monvel draped his mantle around my shoulders without a word. The prince stood waiting at the mountain entrance, flanked by his guards and royal priest. Arms folded across his chest, he watched us emerge with cold eyes. "Hand them over," he commanded. I straightened, Vishop's parting words echoing in my mind. Monvel and I locked gazes. His subtle headshake could have been a warning against either the prince's orders or Vishop's cryptic message. I turned back to the prince and met his steely gaze. "I cannot." The prince narrowed his eyes. "Perhaps you need persuasion," the royal priest said. From behind them, a frail figure was shoved into view. "Tatik Mama!" I cried, lunging forward. But Monvel's grip held me back. I glared at the prince. "You agreed she'd be cared for." "She was cared for. You never specified where." A cruel smile played on his lips. "Didn't you know, Ash Girl? The Firebird grants immense fortune to those who possess it. You're my subject, so the ashes belong to me." Fury roiled in my chest. "I'm not your subject." "Antonius," Monvel said through clenched teeth. "What have you done?" "Thank you, cousin," the prince said. "Consider retrieving the ashes a service rendered, a boon for the kingdom. Your family debt paid in full." "Cousin?" I met Monvel's gaze, my own furious with betrayal. "Sirun," he said softly, "I did not deceive you." Turning to his cousin, he added, "You lied. You said you'd send help to Sirun's great-grandmother." We needed assurance Ash Girl would cooperate, the prince said with a smirk. Hand over the Firebird's ashes, Sirun, and I will secure your and your great-grandmother's safe return home. Tatik Mama's eyes held heartbreaking understanding as they met mine. She lifted her chin, her voice raspy but firm. Don't fret, young Ashmaker. This was always the path. Her loving smile flickered to the ashes. Release me, she sang, her voice weak but clear. Release me. Her words resonated deep within me, not a plea to the guards, but to me. My vision blurred. Years of memories cascaded through my mind. Her singing tales of the Hazaran Bulbul, the way flames always danced to her songs. Her knowing smile when I worked with ashes. The way she prepared me, watched over me. Her constant reminder about the third apple, the listener who believes. The life guardian's soul bonded always tries to follow, Vishop had said. Great-grandfather Krekor hadn't captured the Firebird. He had loved her. And I was their legacy. The life guardian of the Hazaran Bulbul. I had been all my life. With a cry that was both understanding and grief, I flung the ashes skyward. They swirled in a glittering vortex above Tatik Mama. A collective gasp erupted around me. My vision narrowed to my great-grandmother's frail form sinking to her knees. Flames burst from her skin, consuming her clothes, her hair, her very being. She crumpled, dissolving into a wisp of ash that scattered on the wind. Early spring, year of Anahit, day 37. The Hazaran Bulbul has brought hope and love to the land, and into my heart. Today, as we sat amidst the vibrant gardens at the mountain's base, this legendary bird asked me, "Do you love me?" With all my heart, I answered without hesitation. She flew to a rose bush. Bright light momentarily blinded me. When my vision cleared, the most beautiful woman stood before me. Dark curls reached her waist, eyes the color of honey in sunlight. Her rainbow feather dress fluttered like silk in the breeze. This was her secret. And what a secret. I transform every 1,000 years only for my soul bonded, she said with a smile, her voice as soft as a breeze in the meadows. My mortal name is Sirun. In that moment, I knew where my heart belonged, and I did something drastic. I asked her to marry me. I am not prone to tears, but I couldn't stop them when she agreed. The legendary Hazaran Bulbul would become my wife, my soul bonded, renewing not only the land, but my life. Sirun, I whispered, testing how her name felt on my lips. It tasted of sweet nectar. It tasted of a place I never knew existed, but to which I had always belonged. A strangled cry tore from my throat. The swirling ashes coalesced, forming into a small bird with shimmering plumage that caught the light like precious gems, as real as the mountain itself. She flapped her wings once, twice, then soared toward the twin peaks, her essence trailing behind her in ribbons of rainbow light. Wherever she flew over, the earth erupted in color. Flowers burst from frozen ground, fruit trees exploded with blossoms, crops sprouted from once dead soil. The air filled with joyous birdsong. The reborn Hazaran Bulbul swooped down, gold-orange flames rippling from her wings. Her dark golden ringed eyes met mine. You, my Ashmaker, were born with a noble heart. Her voice resonated into my mind, both achingly familiar and shockingly new. Thank you for nurturing me these past many years. I'm afraid you must continue to do so, for my work has just begun. My chest squeezed. Tatik Mama might be gone, but her spirit remained with this beautiful, legendary creature. Grief mingled with awe within me, swirling into a tapestry of hope and purpose. This was what Tatik Mama had been preparing me for all along. "Capture the girl!" the prince roared, seemingly blind to the miracle unfolding before him. The guards turned to follow his orders. Monvel moved to block them just as energy surged through my hands. Ashes burst from my palms, blasting outward. The air around us roared to life, whipping up snow flurries, brittle leaves, soil, even butterflies and bees into a living vortex around Monvel and me. The prince released a raging scream. The guards stumbled back from my maelstrom, their swords clattering to the hard ground. "Foolish mortals!" Hazaran Bulbul's voice boomed across the newly formed garden valley, splitting the sky like thunder. "Those who dare harm the descendants of the Firebird shall be met with the fury of 1,000 flames." With a crack of power, the fiery bird channeled lightning that struck the ground at our feet. A protective ring of fire joined my surging vortex of insects, flora, and ash. Our combined power created flames that crackled with such potent energy that guards, prince, and priest tumbled to the ground unconscious. Monvel met my gaze, his eyes wide with awe. And in those basil green depths, I saw it. Saw him, truly, for the first time. The man who'd fought his own cousin to protect me. The man who'd trusted me in the mountain's depths. The man who'd be my partner, my soul bonded. Recognition flared in his own gaze, both tender and fierce. Tears streamed down my face, grief and awe mingling like rain and sunlight. I glanced up at the tiny bird, now soaring high above like a rising brilliant star. "I love you, Tatik Mama," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. Monvel wrapped an arm around my shoulders. High above, the tiny bird's dark eyes met mine, filled with ancient wisdom and endless love. "And I, you, young Ashmaker." With a powerful beat of her wings, she soared into the vibrant, clear sky, leaving behind a world transformed, and me, forever changed with it. Year of Vahagan, early spring. It has been 10 years since I freed my great-grandmother back into a firebird, and the Hazaran Bulbul awakened. I have continued to write in my great-grandfather's journal, adding my story to these pages, a record for future generations. Across from Tatik Mama's cottage, 3 children climb the mulberry tree, its branches heavy with purple berries. Their laughter rings through this now vibrant village, a melody sweeter than any song. Flowers bloom in every corner, crops flourish in fields that once lay barren. The crown prince gave up pursuing me once the land grew rich, and his father ordered him home. But not before Monvel issued his own order to stay away from us, both of us. Then, surrounded by Tatik Mama's blooming garden, he asked me to marry him. We visit this cottage often, though our home is now Monvel's estate near Masadi and my family. The Hazaran Bulbul continues to spread color and life upon the land. But she returns to this place of beginnings, awaiting the day when her own soul-bonded will be reborn. Today, I sang one of Tatik Mama's favorite firebird tales for Monvel and our children. 3 apples fell from the sky, 1 for the observer, 1 for the storyteller, and 1 for the listener who believes. Far above, the Hazaran Bulbul sang along, her voice carrying all the wisdom and love of ages. When barren earth turned crops to sand, the Hazaran Bulbul soared over the land. I hope you enjoyed listening to The Ashmaker's Gift by Lusine Torossian, narrated by Karyne Norton. If you want to read more by Lusine, go to lusinetorossian.com to find more of her books. While you're there, you can sign up for her monthly newsletter to get a copy of this ebook. If you enjoyed The Ashmaker's Gift, you'll want to check out her debut novel, Lightweaver, which takes place in the same story world. It also won the 2023 SCBWI Florida Rising Kite Award for Young Adult Fiction. I'll have a direct link for her site and book in the show notes. If you still haven't signed up for the Finding Fantasy Reads newsletter, you can find the link to do so in the show notes. You'll get access to a blooper episode, and then each week you'll get reminded when the newest episode is out. Plus, I also include links to deals on audiobooks, new releases, and freebies from our featured authors, as well as anything else that I think might interest someone who enjoys fantasy audiobooks and short stories. Thank you all for listening, and happy reading.